Hello everyone, this is Damon with PixNub Software. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a cropping action that you can run in batch to crop your full-length images to give predefined margins on the top and the bottom of your subject, and then to center your subject within the frame. This is not intuitive on how to do this in Photoshop. However, it is really simple once you understand the steps. So this action, I'm just going to demonstrate it here. And this is taking a 3:2 aspect ratio, and in this case it converts it to a 4:5 aspect ratio. And you can see there is a margin below the subject and a margin above the subject. In this case, this is 0.3 inches below and 0.7 inches above on an 8x10 frame. And you can make those margins whatever you want, but that's what I'll be doing for this demonstration. And then you can adapt the action that you make to your own specific margins you want. So to get started, I'm just going to start over here. And the first thing you'll need to do is convert your image into a smart object. Well, actually, before that, you'll need to create a new action set. And once you have an action set created, I'm just going to do the whole thing from scratch here. Let's say new set. Let's call this crop 2 because I've already got a crop 1. And then I'll hit new action. We'll just call this crop 8x10. Okay, so once the action is recording, I'm going to go to the layer here and I'm going to convert this into a smart object. And if your image is multi-layer, you're going to have to record the action steps to flatten it first to get it into a single layer, because this method is really for a single layer image. But we'll convert that to a smart object. And then the next thing I need to do is you're going to have to do some math here and know what you're wanting for the final result. And in this case, I want an 8x10 crop, and I want the player to be exactly 9 inches tall with 0.3 inches below and 0.7 inches above, and that'll make 10 inches for the total height. And again, you can use whatever you want, but that's what we're going to do for this. And so the next step will be to crop to the person. So I'm going to do a select subject here. And then once that is selected, I'm going to go image crop. And that is going to crop the image to the bounds of the select subject. All right, so then I'm going to deselect that. So just here's your action steps that are being recorded so far, so you can just follow along here. But now that we're deselected, I'm going to need to set the image size to 9 inches. Remember I said that I wanted the player to be 9 inches. So I'm going to go image size. And then by default, you'll probably have the resample on. But you have to be careful when you're doing that, because for instance, if you are on the default resolution of 72 pixels per inch and then you resize that, that's going to downsize your image. So you don't want that on. So when you go to image size, if this is on, uncheck this button. And what that will do is, for example, let's look. We got right now the image is 3,250 pixels tall and it's 16.25 inches high. If I change this to 9 inches high, you notice that it stays 3,250 pixels tall, but it changes the pixels per inch. And that's normally what I like to do, is to not resize or resample the image. Just change the height and let the resolution fall where it may in order to not actually resize anything. So I hope that makes sense, but what we did is we resized the height to 9 inches, and I again turned the resample off so it did not actually rescale the image. Okay, so now that the image is 9 inches tall, we need to add 0.3 inches to the bottom. So I'm going to go image, canvas size. I'm going to scale from the top, so put the anchor at the top center. and then switch the height to inches, and let's go 9.3. Because remember, the player is 9 inches tall, and I'm going to add 1/3 of an inch or 0.3 inches to the bottom here. Okay, and when I did that, you see that we didn't lose the pixels. When we cropped, those pixels did not get erased, and that is because I converted to the smart object first. If we had left this with a background layer and did the cropping, you'd have empty space right now. But by converting to the smart object first, we didn't lose any information there. So now I need to add the space to the top. So I'm going to go image, image size, or excuse me, I don't want to do that. I want to go canvas size. And then on the canvas size, again, we'll switch the height to inches. And right now we're 9.3. It changed it to 9.299 because it actually has to round to the nearest pixel in the image. I won't get into that, but I'm just going to switch this to 10. And then now we're going to scale from the bottom because we're adding the height to the top. So the anchor is on the bottom. Okay, now you see that we have our spacing on the bottom and the top. And now we just need to go and do one more canvas size. And for this, I need to set the width of it. And since we want this centered, we don't need to do the left and the right individually. If you wanted it off center, you could do left and right individually, the same way we did top and bottom. But for this, I just want to set the width to 8. Oh, excuse me, I'm on image size again. I do not want to be on image size. I want to be on canvas size. I tried to do that twice now, but I caught myself. So on canvas size, we're going to set this to 8 inches wide. You can see right now it's 10 inches tall, but it's only 3.3 inches wide. So I set that to 8 inches. And that did the trick. Now if we look at our image size, we are 8 by 10, and that 361 again, that was because we turned the resample off, and this just keeps the native size for whatever was left over. If you wanted to take this a step further and you wanted to actually resize your image, you could do this now. You could also do this during the other resizing that we did here, but if I wanted to resample, and now we have 8 by 10 at 300 pixels per inch for 2400 by 3000. So that's completely up to you whether you want the resampling on or off. I'm just going to leave it on just for this demonstration. But like I say, I typically don't resize this. Whenever I crop, I leave the images at the native resolution for whatever you have left over. So anyway, let's grab another image just so I can talk about a couple of things here. Let's start with this image here. So this image was shot off center. So if we run this cropping here, I picked this particular image for the demonstration because I wanted to show you what to be careful of. So I ran this action and it worked perfectly except for there is empty space. So it made the player 9 inches tall. It put 0.3 inches below, 0.7 inches above, just like it's being told to do, and then it put the canvas at 8 inches wide. But since it was shot too close to the edge, you can see now we have empty space on the right side. And the other thing too is it centered the player as a whole. So in the case of this image, it's centered to the edge of the image. So you can see the edge of the canvas to this foot here is the same as the edge of the canvas to this foot. So the feet were the outermost part of the image. And so when it did the select subject and cropped, that's how it gets centered. And so, like for instance, there's a base in here. If you were trying to center with the base centered, it's not going to do that. Because if we run select subject here, it is going to, remember, it's going to crop to this subject and then center based on that. So initially when it does its crop, this is how it's going to crop. And like I say, the feet were the widest part in this particular image, but it's going to perform its centering around that. And so in this particular image, let me go back here real quick. And so just so I can talk about when you're shooting, if you know you're going to run an action like this, it's best to probably back off and shoot a little bit wider. And because if you're on a 3:2 aspect ratio, even though you have lots of gap on top and bottom, you don't necessarily always have as much on the left and right if you're cropping an 8x10, because that's much more of a square aspect ratio. And last image I want to demonstrate here, because I want to talk about one more thing too. And before I record the action, I'm just going to do a select subject here. And an image crop. Okay, so the last action I created was the basic version. I'm going to show you how to do a little more advanced version here to compensate for this. So when I did the cropping, you see the marching ants line. Oops, I didn't want to move that here. But you see this line here? It didn't crop right to that line. And it looks like it did on the feet and on the helmet here. So you see the right edge is up against that foot, the left edge is against the helmet, the top edge has this gap built in. If I look at a mask here, the reason why it did that is because that hair has some partial transparency that the select subject picked up, and it cropped to the edges of that partial transparency. And so since the marching ants can't really show that, you're not going to see that partial transparency here, and so it's including those bits of hair in the crop. And so if you don't really want to include that, I'm going to record this action again, but I'm going to do this an alternative method to get rid of that. And that'll give you a chance to see the whole action building process one more time anyway. So let's start back over and new action. We call this crop 8x10 2. So again, let's convert this to a smart object. Select subject. But this time, instead of just cropping, I'm going to create a layer mask that we're going to later throw away. And then if I hold Alt down on Windows or Option on Mac and click on the mask, you can see that there is a layer mask in there. And what I want to do is get rid of these areas that are partially transparent, because we don't want the crop to be up against there. And if we run a levels, I'm sorry if this is getting a little advanced for some users, but it's just the way it is, I guess, because this is sort of an advanced technique we're doing anyway. But if I push this black slider all the way over until I see those hairs disappear, and you can even go a little bit more if you want, just to make sure everything is gone. And go a little bit more than you need, because every image is going to be a little bit different. And on that one, I pushed the slider to 195, which is quite a bit far to the right. But don't be afraid to go past where you need, because this mask is going to be thrown away anyway. So now if I control click on the mask itself, I'm now loading this mask as a selection. And now I can go image crop, and I'm cropping to that mask. Then I'm going to take the mask and throw the mask away. And then deselect. And you see where the marching ants are now? It cropped right to the edge there. So now you see that we fixed that crop, so we're going to exclude those partially transparent hairs on the top of the head, which will give you a more accurate looking top margin. Just a few extra steps in our action, but the rest of the action is going to be the same now. So if I just go image, image size, uncheck the resample, make this 9 inches tall. And again, it doesn't have to be 9 inches. You can do whatever you want. And once you play around with this, you'll kind of learn how the centering works and the margins work, and you'll be able to, like I say, adjust the numbers. So let's go to canvas size. Okay, on this, let's again, height in inches, 9.3. Anchors at the top center because I'm adding 0.3 inches to the bottom. And then image canvas size. Again, switch to inches. Let's make this 10. Now we're anchoring from the bottom, so we're adding 0.7 to the top only. And then make this 8 inches wide. Okay, and that is it. Now let's test this same action on another image, make sure it works. All right, looks really good. Let's close all of these, and I'm going to show you how you could batch process that. Photoshop has got a couple of built-in batch processor scripts. However, I'm going to not use those. I'm going to use the PixNub hot folder program because I really like this program for batch processing. Okay, I think I have a hard drive that's asleep here. I've got some mechanical drives that have to wake up, and Photoshop has to wake up those drives, which is why this is taking so long. All right, so now that I've got that open, I'm going to go to the folder. Make a new folder here. All right, I've got a source and a save folder. Now let's just save as JPEG. And then after you create new actions, you'll have to hit Reset Actions drop down to load those into the drop downs. We'll load that action we just made and hit Run. Now the bulk of the time for this to run is just the time to do that select subject, because that does take 4 or 5 seconds an image in Photoshop for the select subject tool. But that's how we are centering the subject to the crop. And I'm pretty sure within this run there's going to be a couple that have the crops that were too tight in camera. But we'll see what we get here. All right, let's see what we got. No, I just think just the one was too tight. And this one here where they were too close to the edge. Oh, this one just a little tiny bit. You can see. You can see just the edge of this, a few pixels of white space. Like I say, if you make sure you shoot a little bit looser, then you'll never have to worry about that. And again, you see the face isn't centered, but the edge where the select subject was, so the feet again are the widest here, and it's got even spacing on each side. And again here, If we look at the spacing of where the, I'm not even sure, this one might not have got perfectly centered because again we are, let's see where this, oh, you don't have the original up here, but I'm just curious if select subject was, oh yeah, that's why it didn't get perfectly centered, because see what select subject does on this, the feet are embedded in the grass. It's not picking up the edge of that foot. So it's picking up the edge of this foot. So the spacing again, this space here is going to be equal to this space. So in the cases where you've got feet that it's not picking up the edge, it's not going to center based on where that toe is. Anyway, just that is what it is. That's just your limitations. Again, you can see your space here, and that's going to be equal to this space we've got here for how it's centering. Anyways, thanks for watching, and hopefully this helps you out, because you can really use this cropping technique for a lot of different situations other than just batch cropping. It's good for other actions you run where you're creating effects, and cropping is just part of that effect. It's a good technique to know.